Today, I present to you a review of set 75449, the Siege of Mandalore Battle Pack. With 116 pieces and a retail price of $23 in the US, an important question has to be asked. Is this set worth the price? Now let's open the box up and take a look inside. So after opening the box, this is what you get, and it's pretty much to be expected. 3 bags full of parts, the instructions, and then some loose bricks. I'm not exactly sure why they didn't just put these loose bricks in a bag, because they've put those bricks into bags before. Maybe it's just because they're the largest pieces of the set. But because they were loose, I did manage to drop all 3 of them on the floor while opening this box up, so if you do buy this, just be careful of that. Here's what the set looks like when it's been built and finished. The first thing we're going to look at is going to be the figures. First up, for the Mandalorian Super Commandos, I personally think these are pretty good figures. I have heard some people critique them in saying that their visors are not black, and that's incorrect and it ruins the vibe of the figures, but I personally don't see that as a huge downside. With previous helmets, they have been black, but when you really compare the extra detailing that have gone into these helmets compared to normal ones, I do think that they look really nice still. Plus, when you look at the fact that one of them is made almost all of black pieces, the torso and the helmet, having the visor black might have just looked too much of an eyesore and it would have looked like a black Mandalorian instead of a Super Commando. With that being said, I do think that they should have been black. It would have been much more screen accurate and probably would have made the figures look cooler, but for how much people are critiquing them, I don't really think it's that bad. Especially when you really focus on the detailings of the torso and legs, the figures just still look really nice overall, and it doesn't feel like they're bad figures by any means. The accessories for the Mandalorian figures include 3 of these blaster pistols, just the standard one that LEGO makes, and then these nice little shield pieces which represent the arm shields that Mandalorians have. Honestly, the addition of this small personal shield is not something I would have thought to add, but I really love how it looks on the figure, and I feel like the small shield just adds a lot of value to them. Now, one thing I think is interesting is that LEGO gave us the standard blaster pistol for these figures instead of their Mandalorian blaster pistols. While these smaller ones are more size accurate, LEGO's always seem to favor giving Mandalorians the larger version since it's more accurate. And while it doesn't make much of a difference, even though they're more size accurate, I do kind of wish they'd given us the other versions, considering they're not nearly as widespread, and would have definitely added some more uniqueness to these figures, in my opinion. I am a little disappointed, despite all of the helmets having holes, they didn't include anything like a visor piece, because I feel like that just would have looked really nice, and would have been great because you could have given it to a clone trooper, or you could have given it to a Mandalorian, and it'd be interchangeable, depending on how you want it to look. And adding accessories would have made these helmets much more unique, so when army building with these, you wouldn't just have a bunch of the same figures, and you could give them more variety. With all of my critiques out of the way, I do feel like these are really solid minifigures, and are just some really good Mandalorians overall. For the clone figures, I feel like there's less to be said about them, mainly because they aren't such a new figure, and the 3/32nd variation of the clone trooper has already been done in multiple sets. The loadout for the clone troopers isn't nearly as nice, in my opinion, as the Mandalorians, mainly because the Mandalorians have that cool, unique arm shield, versus just the clone troopers have the standard blasters that you would normally have for clone troopers in a set. When I place a 3/32nd figure from their 3/32nd battle pack, I really don't see much of a difference at all between these figures, and they pretty much seem to be the same figure for me. That being said, these figures are still really nice. They're just not nearly as new as the Super Commandos, which is why I won't spend nearly as much time reviewing them. Now, the Clone Troopers helmets do have helmet holes, and while that's not a big deal for me because I don't mind helmet holes at all, that is something I know some viewers will look for, and so I just thought it was worthwhile to point out. Overall, for this battle pack, I feel like the figure selection is really good, and for a battle pack called the Siege of Mandalore, I feel like you would really expect this. Some good guys and some bad guys to fight. So overall, these are some great figures, but let's move on to the builds. So first off, I'm going to review the Mandalorian builds. So first off, we have this crate. It's just a standard Lego crate. It is in black, which is not a color I've seen Lego make this crate in before, so that's kind of nice, but it doesn't come with a lid. And I'm not exactly sure why Lego didn't do that. It seems to me in almost every other set they've given us this piece, it has a lid on it. I used my crate to store the extra blaster pieces for the stud shooters, but you can really put whatever you want in it. Now for the speeder. So first off, being a battle pack speeder, I actually think this is a really nice speeder. It has nice functions, it looks like a pretty good version, and I love the boosters on the back. It makes it feel not only as it's a land speeder, but also could fly above a battle with those huge boosters. It also has a decently roomy interior with plenty of room to sit down a figure, as well as the nice control panel and windscreen piece. As you can see, there's plenty of room to hold the Mandalorian figure, and you don't need to remove their jetpack to put them in. If you put your other figure on a turret, he does clip in there nice, but he doesn't fit nearly as snugly as the first figure. There's really no good way to get him to actually sit on the plate, and so it feels like it would almost be better to have him like flying as the speeder's going, which would be really impractical in universe. That being said, the turret is on a ball joint, so it can rotate in pretty much every direction you want, which is nice. So overall, I think this is a really nice speeder, and I love the designs on it. I just wish that the back figure who controlled the turret would sit on there a little cleaner. For the clone side of the build, at first I thought this little barricade seemed kind of random. I mean, there's holes in the barricade, so it wouldn't be very effective at stopping bullets. So I kind of figured, like, what was the point of this barricade? We never saw this in the show. But then my imagination took over and I went, wait, what if like a rocket hit a building, the building collapsed, and the clone picked up a piece of metal, threw that against a piece of concrete, and then threw a blaster on top as a point of defense? And in that sense, I feel like this works really, really well as a small side build. I think you could also use it really well as like a counter to the speeder, as though when the speeder's driving, you could use this as like a barricade to stop it so that it doesn't go through. And they would have to destroy this before the speeder could go through. A minifigure can hold the blaster attached to the little piece of fence, and I feel like it looks really nice in that sense, like a perfect defensive point. And there's even a little box back here you can store their blaster in while they're shooting up the main cannon. So while at first seeming a bit random, I actually think this little barricade defense is really, really nice for this battle pack and adds a lot of unique details. Another thing worth noting about it is while the speeder feels like you can really only fit one figure in there, and that's all that will work, this really feels like you could get 4 or 5 clone troopers to hide behind it, and there's plenty of room back here for a lot of troops, and so it's not as tied down to figure limits as the speeder is. So overall, I feel like this is also a pretty good side build, not nearly as good as the speeder, but it still works and it still feels like a battle pack. Also, just on a side note, these are the extra pieces that came in my copy of the set. So overall, I think this is a really nice battle pack. Lego did a good job with designing it and making it, and I feel like the builds really help the figures, and it's not like sometimes the build doesn't correlate to the figures and it feels random and out of place. To answer my question in the beginning, is this set worth buying? I would say yes. I am happy I picked up one, and I'm glad it can become a part of my collection. That being said, due to the figures and the price, I personally wouldn't want to army build with this set. This is something I feel more like you want to buy 1, maybe 2 of, and now you have a nice variation, versus something you want to buy like 20 of so you can have a huge army. Especially because I feel like at that point, especially the Mandalorian figures are going to be very repetitive, considering Mandalorians usually all have custom armor and custom designs and decals. Anyway, that's my review of the Siege of Mandalore Battle Pack. If you liked this video, be sure to check out some more of my videos, and I'll even put another set review I did on screen. Less to be said about them, mainly just, oh, that's not snapped in all the way.